was a Tuesday when the seed of doubt was planted. A simple, innocuous question from a neighbor, Beatrice, while I was taking out the trash. "Hey, Quentin," she'd said, her brow furrowed slightly. "Did you guys decide to rent out your place while you're away on vacation? I saw a couple moving in yesterday." I chuckled, a nervous tremor already starting in my gut. "Vacation? Beatrice, we haven't had a vacation in years." What couple? She described them, young, attractive, and definitely not us. My mind raced. My wife, Isolde, had been acting strangely for months. Distant, preoccupied, and always on her phone. I chalked it up to stress from her job as a marketing executive. Now I wasn't so sure. I'm Quentin, by the way. 47 years old, and until that moment I thought I had a pretty good life. I work as an IT specialist for a small firm in Seattle. Isolde and I have been married for 20 years. We have 2 kids, both in college, and a comfortable home in the suburbs. We weren't rich, but we were happy, or so I thought. That night I couldn't sleep. Beatrice's words echoed in my head. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe Beatrice had gotten the wrong house. But the doubt lingered, a persistent gnawing feeling that wouldn't go away. The next day, I decided to work from home. I told Isolde I had a bad headache and needed to rest. She didn't seem surprised or concerned, just nodded and left for work, her usual peck on my cheek feeling perfunctory. As soon as she was gone, I started snooping. I know it's not my proudest moment, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I started with her phone. Password protected, of course. I tried our anniversary, our kids' birthdays, nothing worked. Next, I went to her laptop. Same thing. Frustrated, I started going through drawers, closets, anywhere I thought she might hide something. I found nothing. I was about to give up when I decided to check the attic. We rarely went up there. It was mostly storage for old Christmas decorations and forgotten keepsakes. Climbing the rickety stairs, I felt a sense of dread wash over me. It was dark and dusty, the air thick with the smell of mothballs. I started rummaging through boxes, my heart pounding in my chest. And then I saw it. Tucked away in the corner behind a pile of old photo albums was a small, locked metal box. I wrestled with the box, trying to pry it open, but it was no use. Finally, I grabbed a hammer from the garage and smashed the lock. Inside, I found a stack of papers, a USB drive, and a small notebook. The papers were rental agreements. Our house, rented out to different couples for short periods of time. The names on the agreements were not familiar. My blood ran cold. Isolde was renting out our house behind my back. I plugged the USB drive into my laptop. It contained photos and videos. Photos of Isolde with different men in our bedroom, in our living room, in our kitchen. Videos of her, well, I won't go into detail, but they were explicit and degrading. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Betrayal, anger, and disbelief washed over me in waves. How could she do this to me? To our family? To our home? The notebook was a journal. I opened it and began to read. It was filled with her thoughts, her desires, her rationalizations for her actions. She wrote about feeling trapped in our marriage, about wanting excitement and adventure, about feeling unappreciated and ignored. She wrote about the men she had met, the thrills she had experienced, the lies she had told. She described how she had carefully planned everything, how she had made sure I wouldn't find out, how she had justified her actions to herself. As I read, I felt my heart breaking. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I had loved for 20 years, was a stranger, a liar, a cheater. Isolde came home around 6. I was sitting in the living room, the rental agreements, the USB drive, and the journal spread out on the coffee table. She walked in, her face bright and cheerful, and then she saw me. Her smile faltered, her eyes widened, and she froze. "Quentin, what's all this?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. I didn't say anything, just gestured to the items on the table. She approached cautiously, her eyes darting from one item to another. As she took it all in, her face paled and her body began to shake. I can explain," she stammered. "Explain," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Explain how you could rent out our house for your sordid affairs. Explain how you could betray me and our family like this." She started to cry. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she sobbed. "It just happened. I was feeling so unhappy, so unfulfilled. I needed something to make me feel alive again. You decided to turn our home into a brothel," I said, my voice rising. "Is that what makes you feel alive, Isolde? Deceiving me, degrading yourself?" "No, it's not like that," she protested. "I love you, Quentin, I do. I needed something more." The me more than our family, more than our home, she didn't answer. She just stood there, sobbing, her face buried in her hands. I stood up and walked over to the fireplace. I picked up the journal and tossed it into the flames. She gasped and tried to stop me, but I pushed her away. "This is over, Isolde," I said, my voice cold and hard. "I want you out of this house. I want a divorce." She sank to her knees, her body racked with sobs. "Please, Quentin, don't do this. I'll do anything. I'll go to therapy. I'll quit my job. I'll change." "It's too late, Isolde," I said. "You've broken my trust. You've destroyed our marriage. There's no going back." She pleaded and begged, but I was unmoved. The woman I had loved was gone, replaced by a stranger who had betrayed me in the worst possible way. I spent the next few days in a daze. I contacted a lawyer and filed for divorce. I told the kids what had happened, and they were devastated. They couldn't believe their mother had done something like this. Isolde moved out, taking only her clothes and personal belongings. The house felt empty and cold without her. I wandered through the rooms, haunted by memories of our life together. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, I couldn't think. I was consumed by anger, sadness, and a deep sense of loss. I had lost my wife, my best friend, my partner. I had lost my future. But as the days turned into weeks, I began to heal. I started going to therapy, talking about my feelings and processing my emotions. I reconnected with old friends and made new ones. I started exercising and eating healthy. I started taking care of myself. I realized that Isolde's actions were not a reflection of me. They were a reflection of her own unhappiness and insecurity. I had done nothing wrong. I was a good husband, a good father, a good man. I also realized that I deserved better. I deserved to be with someone who loved and respected me, someone who was honest and trustworthy, someone who valued our relationship. I decided to move on with my life. I sold the house and bought a small condo downtown. I started dating again, cautiously at first, but eventually I met someone special. Her name was Genevieve, and she was everything Isolde wasn't: kind, compassionate, and genuine. Genevieve helped me to heal and to trust again. She showed me what it was like to be truly loved and appreciated. With her, I found happiness again. But I couldn't forget what Isolde had done. The betrayal had left a scar on my heart, a reminder of the pain and loss I had experienced. I decided that Isolde needed to face consequences for her actions. I couldn't let her get away with what she had done. I started investigating her affairs. I hired a private investigator to track down the men she had been seeing. I wanted to know who they were, what they did, and what they knew about Isolde's activities. The investigator found that Isolde had been seeing several men over the past few years. Some were married, some were single, but all of them were wealthy and successful. I discovered that Isolde had been using the money she made from renting out our house to fund her lavish lifestyle. She had been buying expensive clothes, jewelry, and vacations. She had been living a double life, one that I knew nothing about. I decided to expose her. I gathered all the evidence I had collected: the rental agreements, the photos and videos, the journal entries, and the investigator's reports. I compiled it all into a detailed dossier. Then I sent the dossier to Isolde's employer, the marketing firm where she worked. I also sent it to the wives of the married men she had been seeing. The fallout was swift and brutal. Isolde was fired from her job. Her reputation was ruined. The wives of the married men confronted their husbands, and several of them filed for divorce. Isolde's life fell apart. She lost her job, her friends, and her social standing. She was ostracized by her community. She was alone and miserable. I felt a sense of satisfaction, but it was fleeting. I realized that revenge wasn't the answer. It didn't bring me happiness or peace. It just made me feel empty and hollow. I decided to let it go. I forgave Isolde, not for her sake, but for my own. I needed to release the anger and resentment that had been consuming me. I needed to move on with my life. I focused on my relationship with Genevieve, my career, and my family. I built a new life, one that was filled with love, happiness, and purpose. Years passed. I heard rumors about Isolde. She had moved to another city, started a new life, and was working as a waitress. She was still alone and miserable. One day I received a letter from her. It was an apology. She wrote about how sorry she was for what she had done, how much she regretted her actions, and how she understood why I had left her. She wrote about how she had finally realized the value of what she had lost and how she wished she could go back and change things. I read the letter and I felt a pang of sadness for her, but I also felt a sense of closure. I had moved on with my life and she was still stuck in the past. I didn't respond to the letter. There was nothing left to say. I had forgiven her, but I couldn't forget what she had done. The betrayal would always be a part of my story. I continued to live my life, grateful for the love and happiness I had found with Genevieve. I learned from my experience, and I became a stronger and wiser person. And that, my friend, is my story of deception, heartbreak, and ultimately, survival. It's a story that I hope will help others who have been betrayed to find the strength to move on and to create a better future for themselves. But that's not the end of the story. A few months after receiving Isolde's letter, I received a call from my daughter, Braun. She was in tears. "Dad," she sobbed. "Mom's in the hospital. She's really sick." I was shocked. I hadn't spoken to Isolde in years, and I had no idea she was ill. I asked Braun what was wrong, and she told me that Isolde had been diagnosed with cancer. It was advanced, and the doctors didn't give her much time to live. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to ignore the call, to pretend that Isolde didn't exist, but another part of me felt a sense of obligation, a sense of compassion. She was still the mother of my children, and she was dying. I talked to Genevieve about it, and she encouraged me to go see Isolde. "It's the right thing to do, Quentin," she said, "for Braun and for yourself." So I flew to the city where Isolde was hospitalized. When I arrived at the hospital, Braun was waiting for me. She hugged me tightly and thanked me for coming. We went to Isolde's room together. When I saw her, I was shocked. She was frail and weak, her hair was gone, and her skin was pale. She looked like a shadow of her former self. She was lying in bed, hooked up to machines. When she saw me, her eyes widened and a faint smile appeared on her face. "Quentin," she whispered, her voice weak and raspy. "You came." I sat down beside her bed and took her hand. It was cold and clammy. "I heard you were sick," I said, my voice choked with emotion. "I wanted to see you." She squeezed my hand weakly. "Thank you," she said. "That means a lot to me." We talked for a while about the past, about the present, and about the future. She apologized again for what she had done, and she told me how much she regretted her mistakes. I told her that I had forgiven her, and that I hoped she could find peace. We talked about the kids, about their lives, and about their futures. She was proud of them, and she wanted them to be happy. As I sat there holding her hand, I realized that all the anger and resentment I had felt for her had disappeared. I saw her not as the woman who had betrayed me, but as a human being, a flawed and vulnerable human being who was facing her own mortality. I stayed with her for several hours, talking and reminiscing. As the day wore on, she grew weaker and weaker. Finally, she closed her eyes and drifted off to sleep. I stayed by her side, holding her hand until the end. She passed away peacefully, with me and Bront by her side. Her death was a reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of forgiveness and compassion. It taught me that even those who have hurt us the most deserve our empathy and understanding. I attended her funeral, along with Bront and my son, Leif. It was a sad and somber occasion, but it was also a celebration of her life. I spoke at the funeral, sharing my memories of her, both good and bad. I talked about her intelligence, her wit, and her passion. I talked about her flaws and her mistakes. I talked about her humanity. After the funeral, I returned to Seattle, to Genevieve, and to my life. I carried the memory of Isolde with me, not as a source of pain and anger, but as a reminder of the lessons I had learned. I learned about forgiveness, about compassion, and about the importance of living each day to the fullest. And that, my friend, is the end of my story. It's a story of deception, heartbreak, revenge, forgiveness, and ultimately redemption. It's a story that I hope will inspire others to find the strength to overcome adversity and to create a life filled with love, happiness, and purpose. Remember, betrayal is a part of life. It will come when you least expect it. So be prepared, be strong, and most importantly, be true to yourself. Until next time. Now let me leave you with this. Life is a journey filled with unexpected twists and turns. My story is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of betrayal. From the initial shock of discovering my wife's infidelity to the long road of healing and eventual forgiveness, it's been a journey of self-discovery and growth. The pain was immense, but it taught me valuable lessons about love, trust, and the importance of moving forward. I hope my experience provides solace and strength to anyone facing similar challenges. Remember, you are not alone and healing is possible. Take care of yourself and never lose hope.